Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to continue Consequences Day by discussing some more of the fallout from the publication of the Privileges Committee report, as Johnson and his friends in both Parliament and the media are trying to distract people from the facts with an epic temper tantrum about this all being revenge for Brexit by the very people who supported, campaigned and voted for Brexit, because, you know, that makes sense. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So we're ready for round two. Has there ever been a day when the news was utterly dominated by something we knew a year ago? Boris Johnson lied. The report has dropped. Boris Johnson is, to coin a phrase, as guilty as a puppy sat next to a pile of poo. In fact, he became even guiltier after the report was written than when the inquiry ended. He became guiltier as the inquiry went on, as he'd revealed some of the details in the report. He'd impugned the committee. He'd lied to the committee. You know, I said earlier today, my first video, I will never now not find it hilarious that Boris Johnson was investigated for one potential offence: misleading Parliament. That was the offence for which he was investigated. That was the contempt of Parliament, misleading the House of Commons. And he's actually been found guilty of 5 completely different contempts of Parliament, whilst trying to defend himself from just one. But the main offence was, of course, this misleading the House. Of course he did. You know, what sort of idiot rests their defence on the notion that they might not be able to tell that a party isn't strictly necessary for the purposes of work for clerical workers? It's like a bank robber trying to claim that they didn't realise a sawn-off shotgun could be considered threatening. The evidence included witness statements attesting to the fact that Downing Street required staff to put on a show of social distancing whenever they passed into an area where there was cameras, but party time in any rooms not covered by CCTV. All the evidence had to be accompanied by statements of truth, meaning that if anyone was found to have lied, they would face perjury charges in court, as a result, potential imprisonment. So multiple members of staff making these damning statements is not to be easily dismissed, because they risked imprisonment by making knowingly false statements. But with the report finished and published, the real fun and games begins, of course. Boris Johnson started playing games immediately. You know, it's really at the start of the week. He sent the committee a letter of rebuttals at 3 minutes to midnight the other day. Then the next day, he was saying to the committee, "Why aren't you publishing? Stop delaying, let people see this nonsense." But his letter didn't come with a witness statement, so the committee disregarded it as being probably bollocks. The word they used was purported statement. It's fancy language for probably bollocks. Now that it's published, he's decided to throw one of his formerly strongest supporters under the bus, Sir Bernard Jenkins, stalwart Brexiteer, someone who was a genuine supporter of Boris Johnson a few years ago. You know, he was someone, without him, it may be that Boris Johnson would never have become Prime Minister. Bernard Jenkins, okay, backbencher, but a very influential one, very well respected one, and he backed Boris Johnson. And he is now being accused by Boris Johnson and his cronies of holding a lockdown party under restrictions in late 2020. The timing is very curious. Why didn't Johnson slip this information earlier? You know, because Jenkins may have had to step down and be replaced by someone with no skeletons in their closet, but would come to the same conclusion? I think so. Not that anything's been proven. It's an allegation thrown out by by Johnson and his supporters, gleefully reporting it in the media. It might be true. It might not be true. But the reason for disclosing the allegation now rather than earlier is 100% to feed the conspiracy theory. You know, and this could be very damaging to the Tory party. Now, in theory, it is possible that Conservatives, conscious of the need to pull together ahead of a very tricky general election, will close ranks and shut Johnson out. Amongst MPs, this is clearly happening. But what about the wider party membership? No, I don't think so. I think it's very split. And I'll give you, I mean, there's several reasons why, but I'll give you 2 very strong reasons. First, the way Sunak is behaving. So Sunak wants to interfere with the vote on the committee's report. Now, normally the process is MPs will read the report or, pretend to. Jonathan Gullis can't be helped. And then vote to say whether or not they accept it. Sunak is reported to want to change it to a vote on noting the report rather than accepting it. Oh, we've read your report, thank you very much, without passing comment. Now, why would this be? Because there will be Tory MPs in places around the country where the local members may be Boris Johnson supporters, but the public are sick of him. Now, if this MP votes to accept the report, they piss off the local party who might deselect them. If they vote against the report, they might please the local party but piss off the public who might vote for their main rival. So either way, they're not an MP after the next election. So Sunak is trying to subvert the normal procedure here, the very opposite of the due process that he likes to claim he supports. And it's because he must believe there's a lot of support for Johnson amongst the party membership. Not that it'll be easy. There is a vote. There's a vote on the report next Monday, and it will be a free vote, as it should be. And there's another additional bit of trolling here. Bonus troll, right? It's going to be on Boris Johnson's birthday. This also, of course, makes it the 3rd anniversary of the infamous birthday party, which earned him a police fine and for which there are photos in the Privileges Committee report. The motion will be amendable, so Sunak will seek to amend it to give his MPs as easy a time as possible to deal with this. However, there is a punishment to vote on, withdrawing Boris Johnson's pass for parts of the Palace of Westminster. Now, I will struggle to see how he can amend it to simply note the report and do nothing else, because they will have to, at the very least, either support or reject the punishment of having this pass taken from him. Now, MPs that step down sort of get it's called Pass X, I think, or something like that, unless they block their copybook. So, for example, John Bercow, he didn't get a pass as a result of the bullying allegations. Investigation. He was actually found to have bullied people. But there's a second reason as well why I think there's something very telling that sort of informs us that a lot of the party still support Johnson. And that was a little interview with Tobias Ellwood. Now, he's famous these days for being the only Tory MP to be arguing that we should rejoin the single market. But he also implored those in this interview, those small number of people, he said, who were still supporting Johnson's antics, to think about what it's doing to their party. He asked them, how would Thatcher or Churchill, your heroes, react to your behaviour? And it was a really desperate appeal and a sign that he is certainly of the belief that this can cause damage to the party, that indulging in Johnson's tantrums causes material damage to the party. If it was just a few MPs whom you could easily ignore, you would just go, do you know what, go in your corner and cry. But clearly there are Tory MPs who feel the potential for a great deal of damage here. So as I read it, there is definitely a belief that many Tory MPs are on Johnson's side here, or Tory party members, I should say. There are some Tory MPs, not so many of those, but Tory party members, sorry, that are on Johnson's side here. That puts the Tories in tricky territory because they've got a former leader who is toxic in public, but supported by much of the membership. Shoes on the other foot, bitches. Enjoy. Boris Johnson is going to attempt to cause immense damage this summer. He is certainly not working on a comeback. Even if he thinks he is. He may be deluded to think he is, but he can't. He's burning bridges all over the place. Imagine being a Tory MP. Just put yourself into the position of a fairly neutral Tory MP. And you're seeing Boris Johnson acting out of pure spite, throwing one of the people who basically made him leader in the first place under the bus. Is that going to inspire you to support him as leader in the future? No, of course not. If that's how he behaves to his closest allies, albeit former allies, how's he going to behave to someone like you he doesn't care about at all? Johnson is completely out of control. He is raging. As someone who's not as clever, but there's many people who've been conned by him in the past, and although are now wise to him, will say, oh, he's a very clever man. No, he's not a clever man. He's a textbook narcissist. He'll not see the damage he's doing to anybody, much less care. He has threatened to go into overdrive with his attacks when the report is published. So we can now expect an escalation in his attacks. Should be fun. Imagine what's going to happen if the Tories lose both by-elections next month. You know, they're both tricky as well. And I've got reason to be confident that Labour have, you know, I think they could win both of them. And if that happens, Johnson's cult will be able to step it up another gear again. They will claim, well, Boris Johnson would have won them. Someone on Twitter said maybe the media should try an experiment where they don't talk about Johnson for several days. Not on your life. I said quite clear. I'll say it again. You know, we have had to endure his toxicity for years. Now we get to see those who put him in that position get a dose of it themselves. The Tories were always going to regret making Johnson their leader. We all said it. They will regret this. They will regret it. They're doing it for short-term gain. They will regret it. And the thing is, I don't think they regret it yet. I think they regret the way he's behaving now, but they still seem to think it should have been possible to put him in position, get the election win they wanted, and then for him to quietly bugger off having served his purpose. That's how they still seem to think. This is not the narrative that Johnson and his allies wish to present. They paint a picture of Parliament doing this against him as a way to stop Brexit. You know how you've seen the memes, you may have seen the memes, the Donald Trump thing. Oh, they're not really trying to get at me, they're trying to get at you. I'm just in the way. It's a sort of a similar thing with Brexit. It's like, you know, oh, they're actually doing this to attack Brexit. It's not me, it's not about me, they're doing it to attack Brexit. I am the defender of Brexit. That is the narrative that Boris Johnson is trying to pursue. It's a very odd argument, though, because apparently, according to this narrative, MPs voted for us to leave the EU, right? That happened. That's a public record. We know that happened. It's why we left the EU. Then they waited a few years. Then they get rid of Boris Johnson in order to reverse what they could have stopped by just not voting to leave the EU. Does this make sense? No, it's not going to make sense. We're not going to expect sensible arguments coming from Team Boris. Sensible arguments are for sensible people. And sensible people can look at the situation and go, yes, Boris Johnson lied. He continued to lie. And he's let the country down. And they've got no more time for him. Johnson is targeting susceptible people. People who are very susceptible to conspiracy theories. Sensible arguments need not apply. So we're going to be subject now to the most bafflingly ridiculous points being made. But the conspiracy against Brexit would be my favourite. Because I've got no problems whatsoever. I'm not even going to argue against it. No issues with people believing that we're targeting Johnson as a way of destroying Brexit. The more his supporters want to tie Johnson in with Brexit, the better. Boris Johnson is not publicly popular. Jacob Rees-Mogg earlier today described him as a nationally popular figure. He's not. He was. Well, was he even that popular? He wasn't even that popular, really. He was just more popular than the alternative. But he is certainly not popular now. He will look like an increasingly embittered, sad little individual by the public. It won't be long before he's shouting at ducks in the pond. Or maybe swans in his moat. Actually, is he allowed swans? I don't know how that works. But Brexit is also unpopular. I see no issue with merging two unpopular beasts into one so that the public can look upon this unholy gestalt with revulsion. So, sure, yeah, okay, we got rid of Boris Johnson as part of a secret plan to reverse Brexit. Suits me. After all, if Boris Johnson lied about Downing Street parties, do you maybe think he lied about other things as well? Maybe he lied about Brexit. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.